Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the future. We're going to talk about the future of our industry, the future of our human-computer interaction and experience, and we're going to talk about some pretty cool things around combining devices, cloud services, and new media experiences to form a richer computing experience. Good morning and welcome to TechEd 2010. My name's Scott Wiley. I run the Developer and Platform Group here at Microsoft New Zealand. It's my very great privilege to welcome you to TechEd once again. TechEd is certainly the biggest opportunity that we get to interact with technical and business audiences in New Zealand. And it's the 15th year that we've run TechEd. And I know you're going to have an amazing time over the next 3 days. We've got a whole pile to get through in just the next 60 minutes, so we're going to crack on pretty quickly. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to turn to is future people. So another initiative that my team runs is something called Microsoft Imagine Cup. And we get the slides working. Imagine Cup is a worldwide global technology competition for students. It's about not only coming up with innovative solutions, but also trying to find solutions that are relevant and help solve some of the world's biggest problems. We've been running the competition for 4 years in New Zealand, and this year has been rather special. From 325,000 students all around the world, from 120 countries, 68 of those teams got the chance to represent their country at the worldwide finals in Poland in July. And something rather special happened. New Zealand took 3rd place in the coveted software design competition. Now, this was Team One Beat from Auckland University, and they imagined a solution that was not only technically innovative, but also did solve, or helped solve, one of the world's biggest problems, that being illiteracy in developing countries. The concept was not only an award-winning concept, but breathtakingly simple as well. Their concept was to extend the one laptop per child program, which provides laptops to children in developed and impoverished nations around the world, and extend network connectivity to those devices through AM, FM, and maritime existing radio infrastructure in those countries. So an amazing concept, but let's hear about it from the guys themselves. Roll the video, please.
Here we go.
Welcome to the Imagine Cup 2010 here in Poland.
It allows students from around the globe to channel their energy, their skills, their talent on addressing the world's most challenging problems.
I want to welcome all of you to the worldwide finals of the Imagine Cup.
Our solution is to use radio infrastructure to send files, any digital file, to laptops which are already deployed in third world nations.
The Millennium Development Goal we are targeting is universal primary education.
Illiteracy is one of the biggest problems in the world. Generation after generation are stuck in poverty, and we believe our idea will go a long way in providing these countries access to much needed education.
It was a very good opportunity because I could use my engineering skill to help global problems.
Some tough decisions were made. What the judges saw was truly extraordinary.
On to the second round!
It's amazing, we're in the final!
We're in the final!
I'm inspired by all of you that have dedicated your time, your energy, your passion, building something very special to make this world a better place.
So the bright minds like these in our industry, I know that we're in safe hands in the future. We have the team with us in the audience this morning. I'd like you to give them a round of applause, please, for Team One Beat from Auckland University. This is a big deal. Now, the team will be presenting their solution later on today. I think it's 5:30 this evening, a presentation. They'll go through the details. Also an opportunity for you to go along and learn how you might participate in next year's Imagine Cup as an academic mentor, which is an important part of our team. Okay, now let's turn briefly to the cloud, the future computing, the future of our industry. So cloud represents a fundamental change in how we deliver IT in the future. Cloud is a very loose term. It covers a whole spectrum of things from consumer cloud, commercial cloud, private cloud, public cloud. There's a whole lot of taxonomy around it. Over the next 3 days, you're going to hear a lot about the cloud. You're going to hear about the Microsoft story around the cloud. You're going to hear about our email and productivity and collaboration platform, Microsoft Online Services. And you're going to hear about a developer platform for the cloud, Windows Azure. In the next hour, you're going to hear some and see some things which kind of connect all these things together. But what I wanted to do just quickly right now is give you a framework to think about the cloud as you approach it. So you may be familiar with the taxonomy of the cloud, which breaks it down into some different ways of service delivery. Infrastructure as a service, which is about raw compute and storage on demand. Platform as a service, which is about a developer platform for developers to write applications for the cloud. And software as a service, fully packaged, ready to go applications for you to consume in the cloud. I would encourage you to think about these things in a consolidated fashion. So think about these from the Microsoft side world as these two things. And I want to really simplify this. So Microsoft Online Services is about business productivity apps, things like Exchange, like SharePoint, like Office web apps. Windows Azure is about a developer platform for you to write your applications in the cloud. So to break this down into its simplest components, Microsoft Online Services is running Microsoft apps in the cloud. Windows Azure is running your apps in the cloud. Now, we've got a whole pile of stuff over the next 3 days. I just wanted to kind of give you this primer to think about this important change that we're going through in our industry at the moment. Okay, so on to the key thing for the keynote this morning. So 3 screens in the cloud. We've got a brilliant speaker for you this morning. So August de la Reyes is a designer, writer, educator. He's a principal design director in the Windows group at Redmond. He was formerly the user experience design director for the Microsoft Surface. And the Microsoft Surface team have done some amazing work about working with intuitive ways that we can interact with technology in the future. And he writes and speaks on all facets of natural user interface and natural user interface technologies. And as he was described on television this morning, a big blue sky thinker for Microsoft. Please welcome to the stage, August de la Reyes. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. So my name is August, and I live in Seattle, and I work as a designer at Microsoft. Now, it's a real honor and pleasure to be here in New Zealand. This is my second visit, and I like this country for a lot of reasons, none of which has to do with Peter Jackson. But I wanted to share some of my observations from my first visit. But before that, I was thinking to myself, what was my very first impression of New Zealand in my life? And I thought back and I remembered when I was a kid, I was watching the opening ceremonies for the Olympic Games. And I remember seeing a team coming out onto the field, and they were all dressed in black, and I thought, wow, that's got to be the coolest country in the world. And there you were. So I'm going to share a couple of my impressions. I was looking through pictures that I took during my first visit, and I wanted to share a couple of them first. I'm sure this is what you're expecting for the keynote. The first is there's this awesome swimming pool down the street. It's like cantilevered, and you could watch people. It was like a human fishbowl. The second, I talked to my colleague Paul Lowe, who drove me around the city, and I said, I want to do things and eat things that I'd only find in New Zealand, or things that I wouldn't be able to find in the United States. And there was this remarkable flavor of ice cream called Hokey Pokey, and it was so good with like the little bits and stuff. And the third thing is we went out to, I believe this is Davenport, if my memory serves me correct. And we were out there, and I thought, wow, this is fantastic views. And as though it was on cue, as though it was planned, this sailboat came by with the Xbox logo on it. And I was like, Paul, how did you arrange this? And he told me the whole story behind it. Finally, ever since my first visit, I've been obsessed with this idea of a haka. And I've been trying to come up with what the equivalent would be for a design team to do before we go into a meeting with marketing. But I haven't been able to figure that one out. So I've been at Microsoft since 2003, and as Scott mentioned, I work in the Windows group, but that's only been up till 3 months ago. And before that, for the preceding 3 years, I was the user experience director for a group called Surface, and here's a unit right here, which you'll see in a bit. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Surface, it's kind of a big table. It's a horizontal, multi-touch, multi-user computing platform, and it does cool things like interacting with objects. And I'll talk a little bit about my experience with Surface, but since I told you, since I've been at Microsoft for so many years, before joining Surface, I used to be in Windows during the Vista timeframe, but not on the software side of the house. I worked on the hardware side of the house. And there's a small strategic design group in Windows that deals with hardware and how hardware works with Windows to light it up. And so this isn't meant to be confused with Microsoft hardware, who ship keyboards and mice. Examples of programs that were in this group were, like my boss in this group, Steve Kaneko, he's responsible for the scroll wheel on the mouse. And my colleague Carl, he helped pick out the colors of the connectors on the back of PCs. So these are the kind of programs that this group had done. One of my last programs in this group was helping to design the spec for the new Windows key during Vista timeframe. And when my boss came to me and said, I need to design the spec for this key, I was thinking, no problem. This will take a couple days. How hard could it be? This program took 6 months to complete. And it's not because I'm lazy, although I'm a little lazy. This is the kind of design problem that I came to Microsoft as a designer to solve, which is I was reminded of the scale at which we had to think about introducing things to the world. So the kind of thinking that went to this key included all the safety, all the environmental, all the engineering standards from every market on the planet. And not only that, we had to consider every form factor of every potential keyboard that could have this key. One example of these nitpicky details is apparently there's a health standard in Germany that dictates the amount of light that can be reflected off of a keyboard into your eye that's safe. So we had to specify what finishes could be applied to the key so that we fell beneath that safety limit. So that's just one example of why this took 6 months to do. This is a sketch of another program that I had in that team. It's a sketch for a touch-based interface, which included calendaring and family messaging. And here's a screenshot of the prototype. And it was put on prototype hardware, and it was eventually released as the first version of the HP TouchSmart PC, and a version of that software is what was out on the market. And in fact, the touch technology in this machine actually came from here. And my experience there naturally led me to a team like Surface. So around this time of year, I get a lot of questions about my name. And one of those questions is, hey, were you born in August? And the answer is yes. My birthday was the 17th. I won't divulge what year. It's pretty hard to peg down how old I am, partially because this is my second time through orthodontics, and also I social network like a 14-year-old. And oh, by the way, if you want to add me, link me, friend me, there's all my information. In the course of all this social networking, I learned this new term, which kind of speaks to how accelerated our society is. And it's this term called the quarter-life crisis, which I guess is like a midlife crisis, but a little different. And after I learned this term, I realized, yeah, I'd been going through something similar. And instead of buying a sports car or dating 19-year-olds, I found other ways of sublimating it. So, yeah, Microsoft, I see my fair share of midlife crises. I think that's what accounts for a lot of the exotic sports cars in the employee parking lot. But the way I dealt with my quarter-life crisis is I decided to go to grad school. And what's funny about my ID pictures here is you could tell how I felt on my first day at Microsoft compared to how I felt on my first day back at school. And so by a stroke of luck, I got into the design school at Harvard. And this is a picture of the design school building. And it's what you'd expect a design school to look like. But this stands in stark contrast to the rest of Harvard, which looks more like this. This is the dining hall for the first-year students. It's called Annenberg Hall. And yes, it bears an eerie resemblance to the dining hall in the Harry Potter movies. The design program at Harvard is heavily grounded in arts, philosophy, and the social sciences, which is an interesting place for me to be, especially someone working in engineering and technology. And a lot of what a designer's job is to do is to kind of anticipate or tell the future. And what I'd like to share with you is one of the lessons that I learned at Harvard that not only changed the way I thought about design and changed the way I thought about computing, but it really changed the way I think about society and life itself. And I'm going to share that one lesson that sparked it all with you right now. And this lesson has to do with rivers and streams. In the English language, we use the word river for this body of water. And in French, if you look up in a French-English dictionary, the word for river is fleuve. And the word, at least in American English, that we use for the body of water on the right is a stream. And again, if you look in your French-English dictionary, that word is rivière. Now, what's interesting about this is, as English speakers, we distinguish a river from a stream by its size, where a river is large and a stream is small. But in French, the distinction between a fleuve and a rivière is locative. In other words, a river flows into something like an ocean or a sea or a large, expansive body of water, while a rivière flows into other rivières or into a fleuve. So if my French friend and I are walking along this river, then we both agree that, yes, this is a fleuve or a river. And if we're hiking through the woods and we encounter this body of water, then we both agree, yes, it's a rivière or a stream. But if we encounter a body of a river like the Waipa, then there comes this really interesting distinction. To me, this is absolutely a river. Like, I know in my heart of hearts the truth is this is a river. But to Pierre over there, it's a stream. It is a fleuve. And as much as I believe this is true, to him, it is a stream. So at the same time, we're both right and we're both wrong. Yet neither of this is incontrovertible. I mean, it's all dependent on our point of view. What this talks about is the kind of arbitrary assignment of meaning that we have in identifying phenomena that we see in this world. So even though that phenomenon, that flowing body of water, never changes, from each of our reference points, it's something entirely different. So the principle out of all of this is that it's not so much our standpoint that's different, but it's the differences that are the same. And this is a really important design principle that we brought into designing things like the surface, which I'm about to show. So this kind of thinking that the differences are the same has affected the contemporary discourse in fields such as psychology, linguistics, economics, and yes, software development. So when I joined the Surface team 2.5, 3 years ago, we were embarking on this new thing called natural user interface. And what I'd been seeing was a lot of graphical user interfaces just being displayed on a horizontal screen, which isn't surprising. But when we started invoking this notion of the differences being the same, what we did is we looked at the last set of differences in the last inflection point of how people interacted with computing, and this was the command line interface. So through a series of studies and through research, we identified 5 major differences. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of each of these boxes. I'll be doing that in my breakout session this afternoon. But we identified these 5 differences and thinking if the differences are the same, then we could extrapolate some guiding principles on how to think about natural user interface. And not only that, we could actually go a step ahead and extrapolate what the next inflection point would be after that. And what I'm going to talk about today are some ideas around what the next thing is going to be. And rather than talking about specific outcomes, I'm going to talk about the ingredients that formulate this thing that's 2 versions ahead. The way I'm going to talk about these ingredients are in 3 categories: the semantic, the syntactic, and the pragmatic. So the important thing to take away about the semantics or the semantic ingredients of this is the rejection of this idea of dualisms. And a dualism is a pair of ideas that are often considered related, but usually at the far ends of a spectrum or polar opposites, things like body and soul, culture and nature, the subject and object. Even in everyday life, we experience a kind of dualism with work and play. And I'd argue, knowing this industry, that there's a huge element of play in how we proceed in our day-to-day work. To help explain this idea of dualisms a little more, I'm going to show an animation from the creators of South Park. And yes, this is a family-friendly animation. It's an animation of a lecture from the theological philosopher Alan Watts. So here we go.
See, in the history of philosophy and poetry and art, we always find the interchange of 2 personality types, which I call prickles and goo. The prickly people are advocates of intellectual porcupinism. They want a rigor. They want precise statistics. And they have a certain flipped attitude in their voices, and you know this very well in academic circles, where there are people who are always edgy like that. And they accuse other people of being disgustingly vague and miasmic and mystical. But the vague, miasmic, and mystical people accuse the prickly people of being mere skeletons with no flesh on their bones. And they say to you, you just rattle. You're not really a human being. You know the words, but you don't know the music. And so therefore, if you belong to the prickly type, you hope that the ultimate constituent of matter is particles. If you belong to the gooey type, you hope it's waves. If you are prickly, you're a classicist. And if you're gooey, you're a romanticist. And going back into medieval philosophy, if you're prickly, you're a nominalist. If you're gooey, you're a realist. But we know very well that this natural universe is neither prickles nor goo exclusively. It's gooey prickles and prickly goo. And you see, it all depends on your level of magnification. If you've got your magnification on something so that the focus is clear, you've got a prickly point of view. You've got structure, shape, clearly outlined, sharply defined. A little out of focus is going to go bleh, and you've got goo. But we're always playing with the two.
Okay, so the fancy word for this kind of persistent coexistence is dialectic. And one other area we see it in our industry is this kind of dialectic between the designer and developer, where I find that designers are having to deal with code more and more, and developers are starting to deal with design issues as well. Some of my colleagues start using this term diviner, which I myself am not a particular fan of. But here's the thing. I get a lot of design resumes, and this is a design resume from a guy named Joe Milan. Yeah, I was like, Milan, and he's like, no, Milan. And by the way, I'm not violating any sort of confidentiality. He's like, yeah, show it at your presentation. So I got this design resume, and at the top, he identified himself not just as a designer, not as a diviner or a developer, but a designer-per. And the whole gist of this is that this hallmarks the kind of end of these very central, centrified definitions. And I'd argue this kind of rejection of dualisms accounts for the rise in popular media of things like werewolves and vampires, because in a way, in a fictional sense, these are like the embodiments of two identities or two entities that persist in the same person or body. And there's no editorial intention by the fruit on the screen. The second bucket of ingredients is around syntactics, and this is about syntax. And I stole this part from a comics artist named Scott McCloud. So if we look at the series of lines, this shouldn't mean anything unless maybe you're a smoker or a Morse code enthusiast. But as soon as we arrange it like this, I can guarantee that everyone in this room is seeing the same thing. In fact, as humans, we all possess this kind of ultimate compression algorithm where we see the same thing, and we see it everywhere. And the thing is, we have these kind of compression algorithms, not just in identifying ourselves in the world, but also there are others. And part of what's interesting about natural user interface is that we start leveraging these built-in compression algorithms so that as we go through these experiences, they feel natural. And as these applications get more and more complex, we can't rely solely on these built-in algorithms. So we have to think about introducing tasks in other ways. And one of those ways a part of our industry does really well is video games. And I don't know how many of you get your daily injection of Minecraft, but what's interesting about this is I tried to explain this game to my mom when she was visiting me a few weeks ago, and I found it was just so complex. Like, I can explain the tenets of 20th century philosophy to a room of thousands of strangers, yet I can't explain this game to someone I've known my whole life because it's that complex. But what I found was that what video games do, especially the latest ones, is that they prioritize learnability over discoverability. And this has become one of the design tenets in designing for natural user interface. Finally, the third bucket of ingredients is around pragmatics, and it's around the structure of the execution. And I'm not talking about the physical structure or the architecture, but more of the cognitive structure. And I have to bring up this guy. This is a French philosopher named Gilles Deleuze, and he talks a lot about the shift towards horizontality. Modern society is a very vertical society where we think about hierarchy and we think about the center. And what we're finding, especially now in software development, is we're starting to shift more towards a horizontal cognitive mind frame. And the metaphor that Deleuze uses to describe this is the rhizome. And the rhizome is a term borrowed from botany that refers to the root structure that is horizontal and networked. And we see other metaphors for this kind of horizontality, like the difference between the spider and the starfish, where if you sever the starfish, it actually duplicates itself. And we see this in the structure of networks as well, moving from a central to a more decentralized structure. And the fancy term for that verticality that Deleuze ascribes is arborescence, or the tree-like nature of a phenomenon. And if we think about controls in the GUI world, we even have one that is very arborescent, the tree menu. But as you start looking at the way software and user interfaces are being communicated today, they're getting more and more like the rhizome. This is a shot of a Surface application that is actually very rhizomic. It's about as horizontal as the tree menu is vertical. And you'll see this in software examples like the Zune and Windows 7 Phone. We're starting to see the horizontality of user interface. So in conclusion, the three groups of ingredients are around the semantics, which represent a kind of plurality of meaning, and the syntactics, which leverages our innate aesthetic qualities, and finally the pragmatics, which is about intellectual elegance. And there's one other field that embodies these three kind of values, or these three design principles, and that field is in literature, and it's poetry. And so when we start thinking about the future of digital media and computing, and we ask ourselves what's coming next, I argue that we're stepping foot into what I call the poetic age of technology. And that's all I had to say. Thank you for listening. And coming up is my colleague, Nigel Parker. Thank you. Thanks, Nigel.
I'm blown away every time I see August speak. The amount of passion and intellect in this guy, it's phenomenal. What I wanted to do now was talk a little bit about what Scott talked about earlier, the cloud, and what August referred to before the question mark, some of the technologies that we've got shipping today. And we're going to try something really ambitious here. We're actually going to take a whole bunch of computers, a whole bunch of moving parts, and do a demonstration of this 3 screens in a cloud thing. When I was first thinking about this demo, I was actually thinking, this solution, I was thinking, well, how could we build this on 3 things I'm really passionate about? So what I'm going to do is include technology, media, and sport. And when I was thinking about framing this for this audience, I thought, well, who is the sport and media broadcaster in New Zealand? And at Sky Television, we've got some representatives sitting up the front here today. So Sky, I want to thank for providing their logo and their content to the demo that we're going to give next. But I also want to be clear that there is no commitment from Sky to create or ship what I'm about to show you. And because I'm a technical person, I'm a developer, I've been writing applications for 15 years. I know everyone in this audience is going to be trying to work out exactly what's going on and second-guessing the demo as we go along. When I first thought about cloud, I was actually thinking about it as a remote data center running web apps. It was a place where you brought the browser up and you had your applications running over there. But what Scott alluded to earlier, it's a lot more than that. It's a place where we can have managed services, where we can actually just distribute content to multiple devices, tablet PCs, mobile phones, Surface tables. So what I want to do to begin with is actually just draw you the reference architecture so you know the moving parts before we get started. So up the top here, we've got Windows Azure. And Windows Azure is acting as our controller. It's going to be down the bottom, we've got the Surface table. We've got a Windows Phone 7 prototype. Now, this is the only non-shipping piece of technology in our demo. Over here, we've got a multi-touch tablet HP machine, which is like the one I'm working. And then we actually distribute the content and the markers from this controller in Azure. On the side of the stage, we've got live video, which is being streamed during the keynote. And this is using live smooth streaming, which is an adaptive stream, which can be from HD right down to mobile quality video. Up here, we've got a Windows Server 2008 R2 box running the smooth streaming client inside of IIS. And as the video is being captured and pushed up to the box, we're sending our markers up to Windows Azure, and we're streaming that content down on demand to our different mobile devices. So think about that architecture as we begin. And as we begin, our journey is going to start. Our journey starts in the airport lounge at Auckland International Airport. And I'd just like to welcome onto the stage John Papa, a technical evangelist in the Silverlight team at Microsoft. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Nigel.
Great to meet you.
Great.
Is this your first time in New Zealand?
Yes, it is.
So we're here in the airport lounge. You've been in here for about 10 minutes. What's your impression so far?
I'll tell you, it was great. And one thing I got to ask you about, though, is as we're on the plane and landing, we were talking about the safety procedures, and they kept on referring to this rugby thing and the All Blacks, and they even gave me this ball. What is this All Blacks thing?
So August alluded to it a little bit earlier in his presentation, saying this whole country dressed in black, fanatical about our rugby team. Well, the All Blacks, they are the rugby team for New Zealand, and we get behind them because they're winners, except for when it comes to World Cup, yeah. But hopefully we'll change that in the next 12 months. Hey, what do you got there, John?
So it's the ball they gave us on the airplane.
So what you'll notice is we're actually sitting here at not a normal table. We're at a Microsoft Surface table. And it's interactive, so we can put both our pairs of hands down on the surface, and it's identifying the touch points from all of these things. But not only is it picking up our hands, see what happens when you put the ball down there, John.
That's pretty cool. So I know what Xbox Live and Bing are, but what is Sky? I heard you refer to it earlier.
So Sky, they're the broadcast partner for the All Blacks in New Zealand.
Okay.
It's a place where we get the live matches.
Let's give this a click.
It's a touch, it's not a click.
Touch, that's right.
So what we see happen here is we've gone off to Windows Azure to the cloud, and we've streamed down Sky's streamed down some recommendations based on the rugby. So you're seeing a few clips here of the highlights that have been played out over the last month. So we can drag these off the ball, and we can actually identify them and move them down to the surface. Check that one out, John. It's the winning of the Bledisloe Cup.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So what is going on over here with the guy with the tongue?
Yeah, so the guy with the tongue, this is the haka. This is the Maori welcome, the war dance that we do before the matches. It's a tradition that's been going back 100 years. This is the special one. This is the one they pull out when they play the big matches against, big matches like this was against South Africa to start the Tri-Nations. Check it out.
All right. I got to see this. Whoa. It looks pretty intense.
When Steve Bum was down here a few years ago, we gave him a traditional Maori welcome, and I think he was quite blown away. He was awe-inspired by these guys.
I can see why.
I'll just close that off. So have you got a phone there, John?
I sure do.
I'm going to put that down on the surface. So what's happening here is John puts his phone down on the surface. You want to just put your number in there.
Sure. Nobody watch.
So now this is a normal phone, and it's been put down on the surface. And what's happening is it's actually triggering a phone call. And this is a phone call that's coming from Sky, where you can find out more information about what's going on with rugby.
Why, yes. Yeah, I'd like to learn more about these All Blacks. Cool.
Now, John's got a pretty cool phone. But what I've got here is an awesome phone. This is a Windows Phone 7 prototype. And we're going to be shipping Windows Phone 7 in New Zealand later before the end of the year. And I just want to show you a few things about this device. You'll notice the fluid navigation. Got multiple touch points where I touch my fingers on two parts of the screen there. And I've also got some of the launch apps that we're going to be releasing, made by developers here in New Zealand. So this AlphaJax game built by Keith Patton. It's an amazing multiplayer word game that really takes advantage of the phone. If you want to learn more about that, go to Keith's session on building the AlphaJax game. And this one here, this is My Tours. So if you're traveling to another country, another part of the world, you can actually download tours for the city that you're going to visit before you go there. So if you're going down to Wellington on your trip, we could go and explore the waterfront down in Wellington, see a map of the tour points, the points of interest, and then actually start the tour and go from place to place, finding more about what's going on each step of the way. So this phone, I've been using it for a little while, and I really love it. I hate to go back to any other device. But we're not here to talk about the phone. We're here to interact with the surface that, come back to rugby and interact with the surface that we're talking about. So let's see what happens when I put my phone down on the surface. Now, you noticed what happened there over on the ball. When I put my phone down on the surface, the video's changed. Yeah. And now we've got a different set of clips that are being thrown out on the ball. Now, why is that happening? What's happening there? Well, what's happening is the recommendations are being updated from the cloud because I've got some favorites on my particular phone. So if I click the Show Favorites button, you'll see my phone favorites, the things that I like. Check that try out. Jonah Lomu versus England, World Cup 95. I carry markers to this with me. It's amazing content. And this one here, the Corey Jane try against Australia that just been happening just recently.
Oh.
I can see that.
Yeah. Check that one out.
That's really nice.
There you go.
I just... I can blame the lights, but I'm not going to. So let's have a look at these recommendations. So what Sky suggested that I check out? Well, I can see because I had that Corey Jane try there, there's actually a try of Corey Jane versus France that happened last November. So when I take this one out, I'll just have a look at that. If I click that Sky button, we're having a real-world conversation, so I don't want to get in the way of that. If I put my phone down, whoa, see that? The bit's jumped off the screen onto my phone. No wires, just happened in real time.
Do it again.
You want to see that again? So this match, this is an upcoming match of Australia versus the All Blacks. You want to watch that with me next weekend, John?
Yeah, that'd be good.
So if I click that, put my phone back down on the table, see that? Jumping, no wires, up onto the device. So let me just plug in and show you what's going on here on the screen. Now that I've got this on my mobile device, I'm able to press the record button and set my MySky unit back at home to record that match. Put it back in my pocket, and we can move on. You might want to chuck that rugby ball down into the crowd, John.
Yeah, maybe somebody out here wants it.
So we're going to leave our first scene in the airport lounge. You want to go check out a fight? We'll go see the Tua versus Cameron fight.
Always up for a good fight?
So now we're transitioning out of that first scene of the demo, and we're live, we're turning up at the Tua versus Cameron fight. I'm just about to put my phone back in my pocket, and a notification pops up on my phone. Now, because the phone has geolocation, it knows the time that I am and the location that I am. It's coming together and saying, well, am I at this David Tua versus Shane Cameron fight? And if I hit yes here on the phone, what it's doing now is it's launching a companion app for me that's linked to the live event that I'm currently at. Now, this could contain metadata or additional information about the fight that's taking place. If I'm not at the live event, I could be at the pub watching this with my mates. Now, at the pub, I don't necessarily have control over the TV that's in the room, but I can pull my phone out, launch this app, and get more information beyond what's necessarily being broadcast. So now the fight's actually underway. We've got Shane Cameron over here. Show your moves, Shane. Let's see your moves. And then we come in, and something happens in the fight. And then, as I reach into my pocket, because I missed what happened in the fight, I've just pressed the instant replay button in my pocket. And what's happened is we've clipped back 30 seconds. We've taken the content using the live smooth streaming, and it's now streamed down into my mobile device using a quality that's appropriate for the network that my device is currently on. And we can see that there. And then we get back in, we're having the fight again, and then something else, big hit, and he hits the deck. And I press the button again, and again I get another instant replay. Now, I'm not storing this content. All I'm doing is taking a marker to this point of content with the associated data that's happening during the fight, pushing this up into Windows Azure, and then streaming it back in a way that's appropriate using the smooth streaming. See the ground shake there when you hit? That was awesome.
Thanks for inviting me to New Zealand.
Thanks, John. Enjoy your session.
I will.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So for the final scene in our presentation, what happens when we actually leave the fight and then I get home? And I've got another form factor here. I've got the HP multi-touch tablet. Now this could be anything. It could be a desktop machine. It could be my TV. But the idea is really around presence and having that presence follow from the table to the phone to the mobile app and then back to my home environment. And what you notice, if you actually look closely at the tablet here, here's the recommendation I moved to my phone earlier of the Corey Jane try versus France. And we can actually see that playing back down on the machine. It's got my favourites. It's got the reminder to record the upcoming Tri-Nations match. And then also we've got the highlights from the fight that we've just been at, the Tua Cameron fight. But not only do we have the recommended highlights that have been delivered by Sky, I've also got my highlights that we've created during the fight. So we see here the instant replays, and this time the quality might be better because I could be on a broadband connection getting a higher stream quality of the video streaming down. We'll see that. Let's see the king hit. And here comes the king hit. Boom. So really, just to wrap that up, what I've shown you here is I've shown you a cloud service which is controlling the delivery of content and the markers to all of these different devices. The live smooth streaming over here, which is capturing the event once in real time and encoding to all the different streams, and then the ability to deliver a snippet of that video with associated data to the different devices that we've got. So now, when you think about this and you think about productionizing this sort of technology, what's going to happen when you get more and more of these applications turn up over time? And this is where I've been working with NV Interactive and New Zealand Cricket. So a lot of people who know me will know that I'm also a sports fan. And what I want to announce is we're about to launch right here on stage. This is a world first. Nobody has done this, as far as I'm aware, anywhere else. And if you go to blackcaps.co.nz this morning, you'll notice there's a new tile on the homepage called the Black Caps Video Vault. And the video analysis team has been capturing thousands of videos over the last 5 years of every home one-day international and 2020 match. And inside of those videos, there's been every 4, every 6, every dismissal, every key moment of every match, captured in 30-second clips with all the associated metadata that I've been talking about before. So if you actually go to the Black Caps website and launch the Video Vault, what you'll notice is this is a Silverlight pivot control that's displaying all of that information out onto the screen. Now, this is a live demo. It's happening over the web as we speak, so there we are. We've still got internet connection. Thank you all for not using it all. And what we notice here is the design team at NV have created visual cues to identify the different thumbnails for the different teams. So if I look at this based on date, we now see 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, and we can quickly see the teams that we're visiting during those years. If I filter this based on opposition, we can now see that Australia is visited a lot more often than some of the other countries, Sri Lanka, West Indies, England. If I was to do a search up here, I could look for the videos that include Bond bowling to Ricky Ponting. And now I'm just seeing all the videos where Bond is bowling to Ricky Ponting. And if I look closely, I can see just the ones where he gets out. And over here, we've got more information about this particular delivery. We can see the venue, the bowler, the batsman, when it took place, and a lot of different metadata that we can click through. And this is the difference between what you've already seen in Pivot before. If I click this, we play the video. I must have hit it. He's got to go for a duck, and it's the only time he didn't hit the ball.
A big moment. But I tell you what, need a glove.
And this is amazing. This technology, this data, it can be viewed in any sort of way. If we look at Brendan McCullum, so I can search on plays that just include Brendan McCullum. I can say just against Australia. And then I can say just when he hit 6 runs. I just want the 6s against Australia. And I want that by bowler. And then I want to look at the ones just when Nathan Bracken was bowling. And the sensational 6 where he won the game with the world record chased down to 346.
I believe he can do it later in the over. Oh, that's bad. Bad for Australia. Great for New Zealand. He got it wrong. McCullum invented. He went outside off stump and he's...
So really, I encourage you to go and check out the Black Caps Video Vault after the keynote. But also think about what you can do in relation to this technology. We use media, we use sports, we use video. But really the ability to capture, filter and deliver back is technology that is useful and can be used in business context and anything that you do in your day-to-day lives. If you want to learn more about how this presentation was created, how this solution was created, Jordan Knight spent 21 days building this as part of a proof of concept over in Australia. And he's doing a session here at TechEd on the underlying mechanics that sit together in making this all work. So thank you very much. Enjoy TechEd. And that's the end of the keynote. Thank you. Oh, no, sorry.
Thanks, Nigel, man.
Thanks, Scott.
Hey, well, thank you. What a tour de force. I wouldn't want to put together a demo like that. Hey, folks, we've covered a lot of territory this morning, and I just want to tell you about something. So immediately following the keynote, there are 3 foundational sessions, okay, where we're going to cover off many of the things you've seen, the developer and platform tool story, the business productivity story and what the cloud means for that, and infrastructure from desktop to cloud. So those 3 sessions follow this one immediately. So I hope you have a great learning experience over the next 3 days. We're going to have a lot of fun. In the words of B.B. King, or to paraphrase him, learning is a beautiful thing because no one can take it away from you. Please go out there, have an excellent TechEd, and thank you very much. Good morning.